Hi, my name is Danny Fenton and I'm an aeromodeller and an engineer. Join me on a fascinating journey where I show you some of the techniques used in scale aeromodelling. For today's video, I'm just going to do something a little bit different. Now, you probably all know how to do all of this, and it's not really part of the Chipmunk series. It's just a basic maintenance type video, and I'm going to show you how I go about repairing the wing or the wings of my Spinach and Custard Chipmunk. It had a bit of an arrival at West London Model Aeroplane Club, in that I hit an area of sink right on the last 3 foot of my approach, and it descended a little quicker than I was expecting. And I don't know why, but instead of it just arriving a little bit hard, which should have done, the both undercarriage legs caught in the grass, or they've got astroturf there, and I'm wondering whether it caught the edge of the astroturf. I'm not sure, but either way, the model just stopped as if I'd gone over a piece of wire or something like that. It just grabbed both legs, bent the wheels back, and bent both legs back. So, and it's not ripped them right out of the wing, but it's broken the mounts for both of them. So, you know, most of you know how to deal with this, but there may be some people that are new to the channel and new to model aircraft and don't know how this sort of stuff is done. One of the other things you'll probably find, and I hate to say it, but a lot of the ARTFs nowadays are not really very well put together. They're lovely models and they do a great model for the price, but I think you might find when we open this up that there's not been a lot of glue involved. Alright, let's get right onto it and take a look at the damage. So here you can see what's happened. The leg has been bent back and it's popped the blocks. It's actually a plywood plate that is set in and mounted into plywood ribs, and it's pulled the block loose from the ribs and popped the skin. It may look a bit innocuous from here, but I think when we open it up we'll find the block has actually split as well. So not terribly good. Let's just start by taking the axle off, the bent axle. I'll have to put together another one if I can get the Allen key to fit. It doesn't want to fit. I know it does. Here we go. Fingers and thumbs today. Just slacken that off. That's the wheel off. And then let's just take the leg mount off, and we'll see what we've got inside. Now, if you'll remember, Spinach and Custard is a basic Seagull 81-inch ARTF, and this one came in camouflage green and oh, I don't know, baby sick type colour, and I really couldn't live with the colours that have been offered. So as I've seen, well, as you've seen in a previous video, I resprayed it silver with some rather fetching blue Cranfield stripes, and it's been quite different, and I've really enjoyed flying it, and it's had quite a few flights now. It's doing very well, and this is the first real issue I've had, but it shouldn't take too much to sort it out. Because the model is painted over film, I can quite easily repair this, put some film over the top, and then just airbrush some more Class Coat Silver onto it. You can see how the mount is made on these Seagull models aircraft. There's a pin down through the middle, and that block is actually, the hole is angled. You'll see the leg is not absolutely perpendicular to that mount. It's a very specific angle that the mount is at, to allow for the angle of the plate in the wing. So you've got to be careful of that. When you put them back in, make sure you put them back in the right orientation. Right, so to get access, I'm going to open up. That's already split along there, so I'm going to open up along here, And don't be afraid to cut it open much further than you think. You've got to have access. You're going to have to repair it anyway, so just get on with it. I'm cutting at an angle. This will allow the wood to sit flush when you push it back down again. So there we can see what's happened. Hopefully you can see what's happened. That little tiny piece of wood there was all that was supporting this plate and keeping it in. If you look there, there's no glue. And I think you'll find on this end there's no glue. I'm going to open this end as well, just to give us access to this piece. So there's glue along the top, and it has actually split the plywood. So this piece of ply here is not marine ply, it's not good quality ply, it's fairly rubbishy ply. That top bit is not really doing a lot. So we'll see if we can pop this out of there. If it's glued in, then you wouldn't be able to do this. Well, there's a little bit of glue on the bottom there, but it's not, you know, you can see in here there's a glue along that edge, but there's no glue on the seat. There's no glue on that seat. No glue on that one. That one may have had some glue on it, but it looks like there's a knife edge along there, which means the wood has split right on that joint. But looking in there, what's actually happened is they've cut that to make it thinner to fit in that notch. So that looks like that remainder of that wood would be stuck that bolt to that beam, but it isn't. And these beams, let me just see if I can hold it up so you can see. In there's no glue on any of those surfaces. So although it shouldn't have broken, and it was my landing error that caused it, that should not have been quite so dramatic. So what I'm going to have to do, as it's split, see the pliers split and twisted, I'm going to have to make new mounts to go in there. Right, so I'll see if I can find some suitable ply, real ply, not this stuff, and I'll draw around these, cut them out on the bandsaw, and we'll get those fitted in here. This is the block from the port wing, and you can see again the plywood is just twisted and buckled and snapped. It's not real ply, it's not marine ply, this is light ply. Really not suitable for this sort of work. So we need to make two of these. I'm not sure if they're the same. That would be nice if they are. Well, there we go. Isn't that nice? They're not handed. So anyway, I've labelled starboard and port, so I won't get them muddled up. But I'll make two more of those and we'll carry on. So what I've had to do is cut 4 of these out of 1/4 ply, and it's good quality aircraft ply. So I'm going to use 2 laminated together to give us the required thickness, and I'm going to probably have to just whack them onto the bench sander just to get them a bit thinner. I probably should have used 1/4 and 1/8, combined the 2, but there we go. It'll work either way. So I've cut the insides with a fret saw, and the outsides were done on the bandsaw, so you know, they'll be plenty strong enough and they'll fit back where the broken ones were. I think what I'll probably do before I go, once these are joined together, is I'll drill the holes where the undercarriage mounts so that it's accurately cut. So the next thing to do is to join these together. Now they've got reference arrows on them, so I know which way round they go, and that was from when they were drawn round. So we'll glue these together and clamp them. You should really use a fairly long setting glue for this. This is a 20-minute epoxy, which should be fine. Turn this one over ready, because it's not cold out here. It's 12 degrees, so it's not, you know, that cold, but it's also not that warm. We'll mix plenty here. 50-50, about the same size dollops should do us. Suitable stirring stick. The longer setting time gives you more time, and also it does tend to bond into the fibres of the wood a bit better. You don't really want it thinned so it soaks in, but you do want it so that it has a chance to bind to all the little fibres and everything to give you a good joint. The quick setting stuff perhaps doesn't soak in quite as much or grip quite as well. But if you add solvent to epoxy, you change the properties of the epoxy, so be very wary before you add any solvents. If you look on any of the epoxy reference guides and stuff like that, they do not advise thinning epoxy. You'll have seen these before. I've used them before. It's a paint palette, an artist's palette knife. This is a slightly wider one, which is specifically, you know, for spreading it out on larger areas like this. And there we go. Make sure we got the arrows lined up again. Slap the two together, make sure they're nice, and then I'm just going to clamp them. With a couple of bulldog clamps. Let's do the other one. Mixed up far too much epoxy, usually the way, isn't it? For some reason I had it in my mind that we were gluing 2 together and then the 2 pairs were going to get glued together, which would be a bit silly, obviously. There we go. Make sure we line the arrows up. Get everything nice and true. Clamp it all up, and then we'll revisit these in a few hours, maybe even tomorrow. So after a good 10 minutes on the belt sander, I was able to take 2 layers, which is 1/8 of an inch, off of each of these plates. With hindsight, I should have made these out of a piece of 1/4 and a piece of 1/8 and laminated them 2 together, and then they wouldn't have needed belt sanding. But as it happens, it's fine, and it was easy to get an even amount off because you simply took 2 layers off, and when you got to the adhesive on the second layer, you knew you were at the right point. So they're done. I have noticed, however, that one end is thicker than the other end. And when you look at the wing, you can see that the outboard rib, the notch is smaller. So we go in that way. And I'm going to have to relieve a bit more of this balsa, I think, to get them in. But, again, that one's that way. So we might have a bit of tweaking to do to get that to work. A little bit off that edge, I think. It's going to take some fiddling and fettling. So what I'll do is I'll dedicate one to each wing, and then that's it. That will be for that wing. And I'll make them fit. I'm going to fettle these until they fit in there. Then I'm going to cover this runner here, needs to go back on. I'll epoxy that back in. In fact, I should have done that while I had some epoxy mixed. But I'll epoxy that back in. Then we'll fill that area with epoxy and drop this back in on top of there. Okay, so that's the plan. Well, it's taken quite a bit of fettling to get these shapes just right. But it now all fits, and it goes in nicely. So that's good. So all I need to do now, and I've done the other wing as well. So all I need to do now is mix up some epoxy, and we'll get the areas in there sort of coated with glue, and then we can put those bits together. And I'm seeing all, well, not all, but a good lot of epoxy squelching out the edges, so that's very good to see. What you've seen me just do there is I've made a tapered wedge out of a cocktail stirrer, and it's tapered, it's sanded. So what I've done is I've pushed that down really hard and then driven the taper in. And it's kind of held everything in position. What I'm going to do is actually put some epoxy on it as well, because the taper will have to stay in there, because it's wedging it, and if I pull it out, then it'll take away some of the glue that's on the joint. So now we can put that aside to set while we look at the other wing. There is a school of thought that might say that actually the weak mount provided a weak link for it to let go, so that it didn't do any damage to the wing ribs and to the rest of the wing. And that is true. That is true. You do sometimes want the area at the brakes to be easily repairable. You know, so there is an argument that I should have used light ply again, so that it would all break apart again. But what really should happen is the pin that the leg is mounted on, the metal pin, should bend and flex to accommodate. Now I'm just doing that screw up to hold the plate down, and now I'm going to use what's left of the epoxy to just fill in some of the gaps, because the way this was originally built was that these blocks were fitted between the ribs, and then the ribs fitted to the wing and the whole lot assembled. So to actually fit these blocks between two ribs when you can't move the ribs apart, it does mean you've had to put chamfer angles on the plates to get them to slide into position. And those chamfer angles mean gaps when the plates are fully down, and that's just what I'm slapping some adhesive, some epoxy into to fill those gaps. It's not ideal, you know, you'd rather have a wood to wood joint, but you know, to do that you'd need to actually take the ribs out of the wing, and that's not going to happen. You know, you're building a new wing if you do that. So this will be a good compromise, I think. It will be much stronger than it was. I just hope we haven't shifted the point at which it breaks to the ribs. I don't think we have. And that should do us. And all we've got to do now is put the sheeting back if we can. If we can repair the area and it doesn't look too bad, then we'll go with that. Otherwise I'll drop some more film covering over the top. This is Aura cover, so I'll just put some Aura cover over and then touch it in. But if I can patch it all back together just by placing the wood in and joining the edges, then I'll do that, and just accept the film has got, obviously, you know, sort of cut lines in it. We'll see how it looks. Well, all that remains for us to do now is to put these bits of wood back that we removed. Just going to take this screw out. Excuse the sound of rain. It's jolly old England, so it spends much of its time raining here. Wow, that's not really fair. But it is. It does rain a bit. Alright, so first of all I'm just going to stick that bit down. And there we go. So it's not a perfect repair, but I think you'll agree it's not dreadful. And as the plane gets older and older, then it's starting to look a little bit worse for wear as it is. Now you can see why we sort of chamfered the cuts. It gives us a nice surface area to push against to fit the parts. Rubbing it with a cloth like that keeps everything nice and flush, takes any of the excess glue off, and presses down at the same time while it dries. It's a useful little trick. Now I'm not saying you wouldn't know I've been in there, because obviously you can see the cut line, but I could just put a patch of film over that and then respray it and touch it in. But to be honest, it's on the underside The model's a bit of a workhorse. Just dripping some down inside here so that it joins the sheeting to that rather thick rib that we had there. So there we are, and then things like the legs. It's the wrong leg. That leg should just drop back in there. Should just drop back in there. There we go. The screws sort of line up. Put the screws back in, and the job's pretty well done. This is an interesting little trick. When you get these wheels, and this is the wheel, and I've shown them before on videos and what have you. The tyres you get are hollow, and they're rubber, so they're not foam. They're nice hollow rubber, and I tend to use them with nothing inside, and I pinch the two inner bits together quite tightly in the wheel, and that traps them. And what I'm finding is I'm actually losing air through the seal. Now what I could do is try and put some silicone on the inside of the joint between the two, then clamp them, and that might hold the air in, but a sudden arrival might force the air out, and then the air can't get back in again, so you're stuck. So I'm kind of moving away from the no air inside and nothing inside. Now what's supposed to be inside them is these foam donuts. This is what comes inside them, and I've just taken them out. But what I've found is they're just a little bit too rigid. So what you do is you take a length of, now you can see this has got a hole in the middle. This is neoprene tube, I suppose, but you could use cord, which i.e. doesn't have a hole in the middle. And what you do, quite simply, is you take one end and you join it to the other using CA. Put little dots of that around there. Bring one end round to the other. Just push the two bits together. And just hold them. I'm actually just blowing the drips off, I don't want the drips to get on my fingers like that. Stick my finger to the tube, to the tire, and there we have a donut. That's rather annoying because that's going to really bug me now that I've got tire glued to my finger. I don't know about the rest of you, but if I get glue on my fingers, I have to scratch it off. It just irritates me. Yeah, it's quite a lot of glue I've squeezed onto myself there. Never mind. So then all you do with that donut is you then force it inside the tire, and that can be quite tricky. Fiddly is probably more the word. But it can be done. And there we go. And that donut's inside there. Now it's still nice and soft because the donut is smaller than the tyre, whereas these foam rings are actually, they fill the tyre. So these are better. And then you just have to take the wheel apart, trap the tyre between the wheel, and then glue a nice moulded hub on the outside to make it look pretty. And there you go, it's a scale wheel setup. I'm struggling to get this apart because the Allen key has rounded on the collet. So I'm going to see if I can get that out, then reassemble the wheel. So I've taken the oleo middle out of the other bit and cleaned it up a little bit. And it's not brilliant, but it'll be alright for another little while. So what I'm going to do now is just reattach the oleo shroud or cover. It's just a piece of lith plate that's got an edge on one, it's got a flange on one side. It's folded around to shape it into a teardrop shape, and then the edges are sealed. And all I do to hold these on is I just put silicone sealant on the leg, like so. Slide the sleeve over the top and then push it backwards into position so it's nicely aligned, and then just let it set. It's fairly simple. The wheels have been reassembled and the centerpiece applied, so all I got to do now is again a bit more silicone sealant. So all I'm going to do, put a blob on each of the screw heads, not screw heads, where the screws come through the wheel. I can get a good blob on that. And I just place the wheel cover over the top, push it down, make sure it's centered on the bolt, and that's it. Let that dry. Same on the other one. Push it down so that it squashes all the silicone. Make sure it's centered. And there we go. Set that aside to dry. And the silicone only takes probably half an hour to dry. Right, the other leg's all been fitted, and I've just put some silicone on the leading edge of that. It's a little bit more tricky on this one because you've got a cable to operate the light, and it's the length of the cable is just, I've made it long enough that it'll just feed out through there as you're feeding this down. And should be able to just grab the wire from in there, wherever it's gone. That's one end. Look, see if I can find it. Yeah, there it is. That's the end of that wire. And then that just gets pushed against the oleo leg so that the silicone can do its job. And there we go. Now all I've got to do now is remount the wheels onto the axles, and Spinach and Custard is ready to go. Okay, well I hope you've enjoyed that sort of a maintenance video rather than anything else. But if you're just starting out and you don't know how to sort of go about repairing this sort of stuff, that's basically how you do it. It can be done a lot prettier, and I might come back to it and do it prettier, I don't know. But the whole model is starting to show signs of age, so I think this is probably good enough for now. Alright, well if you've enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe, and remember, press the bell icon if you want to get notified of updates. Alright, until next time, see you soon.